Maintenance on the bail handle series of connectors is very easy, and it's very similar across the different versions of these bail handles connectors that we have. Most of the maintenance that you'll be performing revolves around this front O-ring here. You will need to do that approximately every 3 months or 1,000 cycles depending on your usage. That's very easy. Other things that you may have to do if you get them damaged is replace this stop pin. We have a kit for that, and potentially replacing this RPV pin right here if that gets damaged or bent. Replacing the front O-ring on the bail handle connectors is very easy. You will want a pick, preferably one that isn't too sharp so that you can't damage the piston, and then the proper seal set for the connector that you got. And if you have any questions on that, please contact FasTest. But this is the correct kit for the CGA 580 connector, which we have here. So first step is to remove the old O-ring, and to do that, use a pick and try to get under that O-ring. If you have a sharp pick, you can poke it and get it out, but I like just digging under, and that way you don't have to worry about damaging the piston underneath. Pretty easy to get under that O-ring and just work it out. Discard the old O-ring. You're gonna have a new one from your new pack, and I do recommend using FasTest only O-rings. They are cleaned and the correct material, clean for oxygen service. So it's very easy. You just set it in the groove and work it around. And also, I would recommend not using any lubrication on this. Lubrication in this application here at the front of the connector would tend to just collect any dirt or grime from the fill plant. Keeping it dry has no repercussions like that, and it'll keep things a little cleaner. Replacing the stop pin may be necessary if you're experiencing some leakage in this area of the connector. This is the stop pin. This comes out under pressure and prevents removal of the connector from the cylinder valve. If there's still residual pressure in the system and you try to remove it, sometimes that can damage the pin as well and prevent it from retracting, and then you've got the issue of making it very difficult to remove the connector. So in that case, we do have a stop pin kit, which we end up replacing this. And to replace the stop pin, you will need a few tools. You'll need a proper Allen wrench, and in this case, this is a lever or a cable style connector. So the size you'll need is an 1/8 inch, or a 3mm can work. For a rigid bail that looks like this, you will need a 5/32, or 4mm can also work. You also need some Loctite 242 or equivalent for when you replace this handle. This handle will need to come off, and you also need a 1/2 inch socket. So we can get started here. First thing on a cable style or even the rigid bail handle style is to remove a screw. On the rigid bail, there's just one screw to remove. On the cable style or lever style, there are 2 screws, but you really only need to remove one. So we'll go ahead and remove this screw here. Set the screw aside. You will be reusing that later. And then you can pull out this cam. Set that aside. You'll be reusing that later. And then you can pull out this complete handle. Now inside, there is a small white bushing. You can see that. You'll want to reuse that as well. Make sure that doesn't get caught in there. And you can usually wiggle it out. So we'll set this aside as well. Then what you want to do is this outer sleeve. You can just push that up and out of the way, and that makes enough room to access it with your socket. Now you want to take this to a vise. I've already done that conveniently and loosen this up so I can remove it. Once you get that loosened up, you can just completely remove it. And what's going to be inside here is this has a small piston, and it's got a spring in it. So you'll take all these parts out. There's the retainer, Here's the spring. And inside's a little piston. Now you can usually get that out with your fingers. If not, you might need a little pliers. So having a little issue here, but we got it eventually with our fingers. A pliers would help there. And then you can set this aside as well. Installation is just the exact opposite of what we just did. You take your kit that you got, and I would contact FasTest to make sure you get the proper kit. Different connectors require different materials in this kit. Oxygen connectors would have a Monel pin, and depending on your connector, you will need different seal materials as well. So do contact Fast Sales and get the proper kit for this. But it goes in exactly the way it came out. First thing you'll do is grab your brand new piston here, stop pin, push it down, carefully guide it in as to avoid any damage from the threads that are on there. Just make sure it's centered. Take your spring, place it over the pin, and take your stop pin retainer and go ahead and thread that down. And then once you get close, go ahead and use your socket, tighten it the rest of the way down, and then take it to a vise and torque it to 10 to 12 foot-pounds or 14 to 16 Newton meters. Now that we've got that installed, slide the outer sleeve over where it needs to go there. Now we've got that in there, and then we reinstall our handle. So take the pieces that you had, make sure your bushing is over the screw or the part of the handle that goes in there, and the handle goes on this right side of the connector here, and you will need to push down this outer sleeve as you install it. So I'm going to try to do that here for the camera with this safety latch on the cable style connectors. You'll need to make sure that that is disengaged. So I'm pushing the latch here open so that I can move this outer sleeve down, and then you attempt to install. So that's in there, and now the connector works the right way. Make sure that your handle's oriented properly. And now we'll have to get this other cam installed here. So again, we're gonna have to push down on the outer sleeve to make room for it. You'll have to line up where that square is gonna engage. You can also see from a top view here that these two NPT plugs are going to line up. So you get them to line up there, give them a little squeeze, and hopefully it'll engage. Just like that. And I saw that fall into place. Take that screw that you did remove earlier and add one small drop of Loctite. Just very small. You don't want to overdo it. And then reinstall the screw. In this case, it'll be that same 1/8 inch Allen wrench. And then you can install this, and if you have a torque wrench, it'd be great to install this to 6 to 8 foot-pounds. And then your stop pin replacement is complete. Your connector is ready to go back into service. If you have a bent or damaged RPV pin, or potentially the spring inside, you won't be able to extend and retract the pin as necessary. It may not even line up and enable a proper connection. So we do offer kits to replace the pins. This is the RPV pin tool. This is part number G580 RPVPT. You use this to extend and retract the pin as shown, and also you can remove this top nut on the 580s and the 540s. They are different. The same tool works for both the 580 and 540. The 580 side of the tool here is a little larger. Now this is a 5/16 span there, and the 540 side is smaller, and that is a 1/4 inch flat to flat, and those are meant to line up with the flats on the piston nut up here. So for the 580 side, we'll just line it up here, and you can remove it. Doesn't matter if the pin's extended or retracted. You may find it easier to push the pin down, but you just get it loose there, and this nut does come off fairly easily. So your O-ring is now going to be loose. You can save that for later or replace it with a new one if you think that's necessary. But the pin itself is here inside the nut. So you can take this out and replace it with the new one. We also have kits in case these nuts ever get damaged that include the nuts. We also have kits that include the spring that's down in there. This spring, make sure that pin stays extended and is rigid enough to actuate the RPV valve inside the cylinder valve. So we have kits that include all of that. Installation goes the same way it came out. So go ahead and drop your spring back in. You can reuse that if you needed to, or replace it with a new one. I do like to insert the pin inside the nut before I install it. You can extend it, that way you're not fighting the spring as much, so have it in the extended position here. If you did have it in the retracted position, you'll be fighting that spring inside it, and it just makes it a little easier so that you're not having to fight it. So go ahead and just put that in. The threads should start engaging without fighting the spring. Go ahead and cinch that down all the way, and then you can use your pin tool once it bottoms out just to give it a little extra snug. And we'll get that there. Now, if you did have a torque wrench with the proper settings, we're looking at 3 foot-pounds, 36 inch-pounds, 4 Newton meters there. And again, this is 5/16 for the 580s and 1/4 inch for the 540s. And don't forget to put your O-ring back in, and then this connector is good to go. And for those kits, please do contact FasTest, Fast Sales, for the proper kits for your connector and needs. Thanks.